Hello, everyone, and thanks for tuning in to PWD Allies podcast. My name is Brent Frain. I'm the host. Today's segment is Ask Brent Anything, and that is ask me anything that you want. If you've been a regular visitor to my YouTube podcast, there's always the comment section under each broadcast, and there's comments coming in on different topics. So today's the opportunity for you to ask me anything. Is it about PWD rates? What's my view? Where do I see things going on a provincial level, a federal level? Where do you see? Your question is, my view is, where do I see things going with the CDB, or where do I think things are going with provincial disability benefits on each province that has a designation for PWD? There's so many topics. Is it about accessibility? Is it about transit? Is it about the housing? There's so many topics. So here's the opportunity. There's so many questions. People may ask too, like, well, what happened to PWD Allies? On Twitter. I'd be more than happy to share. With that, I can tell the listeners and the people that are listening on the podcast version of today's show. I am no longer on Twitter. Okay, I'll make that very straight right now. I am no longer on Twitter. Neil does have a PWD Allies podcast, and Neil, you could share with our listeners what the address is there. So there's one. Oh yes, yeah, no problem. That's kind of that's the kind of the part where we're going to get into all the rest after. It's all good. It's all good. But I'll laugh it off. I'll just say, yeah, I'll make fun of myself. Hello, everyone, and thanks again for tuning in to PWD Allies podcast. My name is Brent Frain. I'm the host. At the beginning of the preamble of the show here,
when is an intro not an intro, Brent?
It was a whole long spiel from me as the host, and I just went off on a tangent of saying this is where it's at and everything's going on. That was my other twin of the host here. Take your pick. Which one do you want? So today's show is Ask Brent Anything, as I mentioned at the beginning of the preamble of the podcast. Today's show is Ask Me Anything. There's a lot of comments coming in on the show. Every day when we do our show, not every day, but when we do our podcast, every segment, there's the comment section. People throw in their comments. What do they see things going forward? What do they want to see changed?
Yeah.
There's so many comments coming in for PWD advocacy. And I mean, we could talk about housing, accessibility, transit, affordability.
Yeah, and I just wanted to start by saying, that we get comments on the YouTube videos all the time. Like, how in YouTube you can actually leave a comment and say, I really like this video or whatever. And I have to say, that we actually have some really intelligent people that leave comments, and they're really appreciated. And I just wanted to highlight just a few of the last comments, just on the last couple of videos we did.
Yes.
There's always a lot of comments, and we don't always have a chance to speak, publicly about them. So I thought, let's have a podcast where we can have a Ask Brent Anything and start the show talking about, comments we're getting from YouTube. And so I wanted to start the show with that. Before we get going with that, I have a question for you, Brent. What's your favorite breakfast cereal?
My favorite breakfast cereal, I must say, my favorite breakfast cereal is cinnamon. It's
the Cinnamon Toast Crunch. That one?
No. Actually, well, you're close. You're really actually. It's cinnamon Cheerios. I love.
Oh wow.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. So you're really close on that. Actually, one of my go-to cereals. I have some favorites, but that is one of my ultimate favorite ones. I like Harvest Crunch, but I like cinnamon Cheerios. One of my favorites.
Oh yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
Now hold on. Give me a second here. I'm just. I'm trying to toggle all the windows here, Brent.
Yeah, and
I'm just bringing up the comments here. And so let's start with the Chad Harridge episode we just did.
Mm-hmm.
That was episode 1 of season 3. We're now on episode 2. But the Chad Harridge video, I had a couple of comments on that one. I thought was really interesting and worth devoting a little bit of time on today's show. So the comment was, and this is actually from Peachyland, Peachyland 1253. And so this is from Peachyland 1253, and he or she says, I just read how Poilievre will withhold the federal disability benefit and make provinces review their provincial disability benefits first. And I thought that was a great comment. I'll tell you why, because I've always thought that was the whole point of the Canada Disability Benefit to begin with, was to hold the provinces accountable and say no more clawbacks, starting with all the clawback crap that you're doing already.
Yeah.
So that was always my hope, was that the CDB would bring all the provinces in line and say, and the federal government would say, wait a minute, before we dole out this CDB, we want to make sure you're not clawing back anything else first. So my comment back was that would be amazing. That would be an amazing, beautiful thing. The provinces have always been fully responsible for this mess. They need to be called out. So that was my comment back to Peachyland 1253. So that was the first comment. I really thought it was an important comment. Really, like I said, our listeners and viewers are really intelligent. I have to say, they leave some really good comments. I love getting good comments. That ranked as a really solid good comment. I appreciate it.
That's a really good comment. And again, with that comment, I must say I totally agree that no clawbacks need to happen from any level. We need to going forward, 2025. We need to stop all clawbacks from any kind. We also need to make that Canada Disability Benefit truly pure, the way that it was originally supposed to be, brought forward, so that PWD across Canada will no longer live in legislated poverty. I mean, period. Because nobody should be living in poverty whatsoever. There should be no clawbacks. It should go to every single PWD on provincial or federal level. No red tape hoops to jump through. Don't waste doctors' times. I mean, federal government and provincial government, don't waste doctors' times. They are too busy to be going through more and more paperwork and putting PWD through unnecessary, just mental anxiety. Stress, and puts doctors on stress too, because they don't have time. They don't have the energy to be going through reassessing people, see if they are eligible for different levels of programs. Once you are disabled, you are disabled. End of story. Like, it's that simple as that. You don't have to say, well,
I never knew that, Brent. I never knew that.
Yeah. Do I need to qualify for federal? I mean, because of a DTC? Just give it to every PWD. You are disabled as a Canadian citizen. That's it. You should be able to
Yeah.
go to and from any province also without having to reapply to another province to see if you're still disabled in another province. That is so archaic. So
Yeah.
I think going forward, I think the opportunity now is that all levels of government need to work together and figure this out. It's not difficult. We've had members of parliament who have been very, very vocal from a lot of different levels, have said this, that get rid of all the barriers, and make this barrier-free disability program, so that everybody can prosper. You give people more income, they can put more of that income back into the communities that they live in. They can live in not precarious housing. They can live where they want to live. I think there's so much opportunity on that. So thank you on that comment. There's so much more I could dive into.
Yeah, and it was a great comment, and I promise that I'm not playing favorites, but we have a second comment again from Peachy Land 1253. So again, I'm not playing favorites.
Yeah.
It just so happened that he or she left a great comment 2 times. So I have to say again, this is another comment, and it was to do with the same on the same video from Chad. But this comment was, and I didn't know anything about this, and I don't know if you did either, Brent, but we'll talk about it. Was Peachy Land says, I was just offered a new rent subsidy by BC Housing called SRSP from BC Housing. And I'd never heard of SRSP. This is brand new to me. So I had to look it up. I went online to the BC Housing page, and here's the overview. I'm reading directly from the overview on the website. It says the SRSP is the Supported Rent Supplement Program. And it aims to reduce and prevent homelessness by providing a coordinated network of services to the eligible federally funded. Let's say that federally funded. Hold on, I'm losing my spot here. Sorry. To reduce and prevent homelessness by providing a coordinated network of services to the eligible federally funded Canada, British Columbia housing benefit. So that's the CBCHB recipients. CBCHB provides rent assistance to make renting in the private market more affordable. SRSP provides services to CBCHB recipients to improve their personal well-being, to enable them to transition to or remain in a stable market housing. The support services aim to help individuals experiencing or at risk of homelessness to access multiple systems to meet their basic needs. So that
sounds like in partnership with
yes.
BC, but federal, but to maintain the market housing. So what my observation on that message would be to help the PWD or a senior to stay in the housing that they're in currently, right? If they love the housing that they're in currently, to maintain that, to be given a subsidy program. And it's kind of what we talked about with a member of BC legislature, the minister who's in charge of the Ministry of Social Development and Poverty Reduction, Honorable Sheila Malcolmson, where I had brought up that topic about extending the PWD, basically the program for PWD to stay in the housing that they're in, extend a SAFERS program over to market housing. It sounds like it might be that. I could be wrong, but it sounds like it could be a new program as an extension off of BC Housing into their, I don't know.
Yeah, and by reading, I'm kind of reading between the lines and reading the subtext. The way, and I kind of read everything kind of related to, I'm not going to get into it because that's a whole, there's a whole other thing below all of that overview. Okay. But basically, if you read more of the subtext, it's basically, like you said, a partnership that is that the money is given directly to landlords to administer, right? So again, you're not actually giving the subsidy to the individuals,
Right.
which kind of sucks. I mean, I can kind of understand it and kind of not, but in a way, it takes the power away from the individual, right? You're giving all the power to the landlord and saying, okay, so we're gonna allow some landlords to tap into this new subsidy program, and it's up to the landlords to administer this. That's what this is. It's a landlord administered program, and you know, and you think, well, okay, that's fine, but is it really? Because you know, we always talk about the 10 to 12% rule, right? I mean,
right.
I don't think it's. I mean, we talk about fairness and equity all the time on this show, right? I mean, until we're blue in the face, and I don't think it's
or green in the face.
Yeah, I don't think it's a good example of fairness and equity when you apply a 10 to 12% rule. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying to kibosh all of these rent subsidies, because it's a good idea, right? My problem is the way they dole them out is very unfair and unequitable, in the sense that the government says, well, here's a rent subsidy for 10% of the disability population. So like 10 to 12% will get the subsidy, and we don't really care about the other 88 to 90% that are struggling in the open market housing. We don't really care about that, but we'll offer this subsidy to 10 or 12% of the landlords out there, and they can dole out this subsidy to 10 to 12% of the PWD population. So again, it's a very uneven distribution again, right? I mean, if you want to make it fair, if you want to make it equitable, make a system where a subsidy is available to 100%. And maybe that's naive of me to say that, but you know, I mean,
I think it's fair.
I don't know.
Well, I mean, my view on it is, there might be some landlords that might take advantage of that, because if they actually tap into it, now it's in the landlord's hands, right, or the manager's hands of the corporation or whatever, or landlord. Somebody must say that, but if they have control in that, now the recipient says, well, now you're eligible. But what if the landlord says, well, yeah, I still want to charge you high market rent? Well, they got that subsidy, versus giving the money to as a direct deposit or a check to the recipient, and so now they have their main income, plus they have that subsidy. Now they give it to their landlord when they pay the rent. Yeah. Now they have full control on that. So if the landlord says, well, I can't charge you the high market rent. Your rent is your rent. Well, I've got this money here, my main money, plus now I got subsidy. I'm going to give it to you. So now they have no choice but to go with it. But if they have control on the other side, now I see the problem where, yes, there might be some bad actors. There's some good actors out there too for managers or property owners who may not take advantage of it, but there may still be some bad apples, and there are some out there, unfortunately, that might take advantage of that program. I'd be very interesting to hear more about this from an MLA.
Yeah, like this is the first time I'm hearing about this. Like the very first time I'm hearing about this. So this is why, again, we're talking about this, because I'd never heard of this new program.
Yeah, I mean, it could be really good if it's actually administered properly. My motto has always been get people housed and keep them housed, versus a lot of people struggling paying high market rent, and I get that. Because I remember, Neil, and to our listeners, basically on the podcast later on, and our ones listening live, like I made the call to BC Housing and I had an argument. I mean, yes, I had an argument with BC Housing, talking about policies and talking about people that are, living in legislated poverty, paying high market rent. And all they want is cheaper rent. They just want to be able to live and put the money back into the economy. So I said, well, can I not get into BC Housing And like, well, as long as you follow our policies. I
Yeah.
said, so you're paying subsidized rent versus market rent,
Yeah.
right? I said, can that not get extended over to people who live in there where they live right now? Maybe they love the community they live in. Maybe they love the housing they live in, but they can't afford it. So they say, well, you can move into housing that we provide, but you would have to be in the area that we tell you what's available.
Yeah.
I said, again, then that's not autonomy. That's not allowing people to live where they want to live.
Yeah, and again, that's my number one thing. I mean, I am all for having more rent subsidies. I think it's great, but again, I think governments, they love to throw around that word equity. They throw it around a lot, but I'm sorry, if you're only giving rent subsidies to 10 to 12% of the PWD population, and then you're saying, well, the other 88 to 90% of those paying market, too bad, you don't qualify for anything. That is not equitable. I'm sorry, that is not equitable.
Well, that was the part of the conversation I had was the word quote unquote was, well, that's a choice that you make, that you decide that you want to live in market housing. I said, oh, well, my choice is that I think it should be fair right across the board.
Yeah.
I mean, PWD or PWD. I mean, why should some get to pay subsidized housing and some, the majority get to pay market rent? And he says, that's how the system is designed. I said, well, the system is corrupt. It needs to be changed. Well, then that comes down to the provincial government to change the policies. I go, again, that's why we advocate to change things, sir.
And you've hit the nail on the head, Brent, because when they say it's our choice, right? They say that's your choice for being in market housing. But let's turn it around and speak truth. It actually is the government's choice to say I'm sorry, we're choosing only to provide 10 to 12% of those on PWD. We're choosing to only give 10 to 12% the benefit of a subsidy, and that's our choice to only give it to 10 to 12%. And too bad for the other 90%. Too bad. So it really is the government's choice. It has nothing to do with my choice or your choice, Brent. It has everything to do with government choice.
Yeah, and where the roadblock is that PWD who live in market housing, they have the rent PWD designation for shelter. Now, if you take the word shelter out of the equation, now every single PWD will now qualify for subsidized housing. I was told that many decades ago, where my mom had just got onto a senior supplement program. And so she was now eligible for subsidized housing, and she didn't have to move. She still continued living where she was living, but I didn't qualify for subsidized housing because I had the PWD shelter designation. Mm-hmm. So the worker that my mom had was in charge of seniors supplement, but was also in charge of PWD. So I said, well, my mom says, well, what if they take away that PWD, whatever that is? My mom says, it's for persons with disabilities, ma'am. And I had a meeting. Okay, so how hard is it to get rid of that? Well, that's up to government to change the policy. Well, my mom goes, well, policy sucks because Brent should qualify for the same program that I do. Well, Brent's not a senior.
There's your mom speaking truth. I love it. I love it.
I loved it, and she nailed it back then. My mom was a smart cookie. She could read between the lines. She goes, well, why does he not qualify for the same program I do? Because he's not a senior. He gets that designation, and that is for market housing. Yeah, and she goes, okay, well, so is there not a program for PWD for that? Well, there is, but it's under BC Housing. But Brent doesn't live under BC Housing. So she says, okay, so he would qualify under that, but doesn't under market. No. She says, oh, well, then that's messed up.
Yeah, it's a discriminator. It's a discriminatory policy, but don't call it discrimination, Brent.
It's pegging disabled.
That's what I've always been told. It's like, well, you're saying it's discriminatory, Neil, but don't call it discrimination. They I get called on that all the time.
It's pegging disabled citizens against disabled citizens. Yeah. It's pegging disabled against seniors against disabled. Yeah. You can have, but you can't have. Have and have nots, and that's cut off.
Well, yeah, and let's say it's on both sides. You're playing favorites. You're playing favorites,
yes.
but you're also playing favorites in the sense of who's going to get punished. Who's going to get punished with the 88% that are not going to get it. So who's going to get punished with the have-not, and who's going to get the reward, right? So there's the segment that are going to get punished. And the government's deciding this. The government's deciding this. Not you and me, Brent. It's the government that's deciding it. It's
totally.
Who's going to get the reward of the subsidy, and who's going to get punished with no subsidy or a clawback or whatever else. And that is government choice. It's government choice. It's not my choice. It's not your choice. It's government choice.
Well, especially when it's based on household income too.
Yeah.
I mean, it was agonizing scenario where household income cannot exceed a certain amount. And so because my mom was on senior supplement, I was on PWD. My brother was still living with us, but his income was way exceeding a lot because he actually worked for himself. And so because his household income exceeded and ballooned up the household income, the income from him, so one of us had to move. And because that's how the program's designed. And your income cannot exceed. Otherwise, my mom would lose her senior supplement. So one of us had to move away. And again, it's a system design one. It puts a lot of hardship and sorrows in a family, and it tears them apart. It literally ripped our family apart. And it was really not a good situation. So basically, they kicked my son, sorry, kicked my mom. Yeah, sometimes I wish, because I wish I could just slap him one, but basically kicked my brother to the curb, or I could have been kicked to the curb. It was a decision that my mom had to make. So I stayed with my mom. So, and I see a lot of families getting torn apart because of that. And it doesn't have to be that way. Again, my motto is keep people housed, not unhoused. Yeah. And that means it's a system design that needs to be changed.
They really do need to get rid of the shelter allowance.
Oh, they need to get rid of it.
If they got rid of that, if they just got rid of it, it wouldn't solve everything, but it would start to solve some things.
Yeah, just give me the pen. I can actually redact that right out of the regulations. Give us the actual password. We can go in there because we know best what suits our needs as citizens of Canada. We're residents of BC, but we're citizens of Canada. Let's change it, government. Let's change it. Let's listen to each other. Let's work together as citizens, okay? Because we can actually make things better for everybody. Let's start with income inequality. Let's bring people up to a livable amount, okay? Then, there's lots of talks about what the poverty level should be. But people with disabilities, they have extra ongoing expenses that are way above a poverty level. The problem I have too with the CMHC, it is a federal government regulated system that was designed that doesn't include the cost of shelter. It doesn't include the cost of food. So those are not even part of the equation when it's built in. So that whole system is so deregulated down. Like there's so many flaws. Members of Parliament, there are some that want to change that and hold the federal government accountable. Because right now it's the language that's actually in there of saying what is affordable housing. I mean, it can be affordable to somebody who's making $18 million a year. That could be affordable. What about PWD? I mean, there's a lot of corporate landlords right now, and I can vouch for it, without giving out any particulars, that are taking advantage of it. I rent from a corporate landlord, and hey, I have housing that you can have right now. Well, it's not affordable to me. In other words, put up or shut up, Brent. Like where you live right now. Well, I can tell you, I go through living hell every day. Some days, I have to have extra cup of Joe here to kind of keep it perked up, keep me perked up here. But not always. I'm just joking. But when I'm joking about the coffee, but I'm not joking about living hell that we go through. I don't talk a lot about it on the podcast because our listeners they want to hear about advocacy, but it really does come down to advocacy, and that's why I stand behind housing, about making it truly affordable for PWD, and because the myth out there is, oh, well, the rent portion is above your income. Nope. It's all included, folks. It's all included. And that is a myth out into society, thinking that PWD are well taken care of. No, we're not.
And that's the thing. If the government if the provincial government was forced to get rid of the shelter portion, they would actually be forced to really look at the full amount and say, you know what, this full amount is not anywhere close where it needs to be.
You can't even rent housing for a check.
Yeah.
I mean, where I live right now, you like a whole check, you couldn't even rent there. I can tell you, in the building that I live in right now, you're looking at $1,800. $1,800 for a 1-bedroom. 2-bedroom, $2,300.
Yeah.
Wow. You know,
we have a couple of comments just before I continue with the YouTube comments, because when I continue with the next comment, it's going to kind of switch gears. So before we switch gears, I wanted to address, there was a couple of comments coming in on the live chat, which we love. The first one from Peter Cunnington, and he says I spent 12 years on a housing list, approximately trying to get into low income housing. Luckily now I pay only $500 a month. So that's 12 years on a waiting list, and now he's paying $500 a month. So that's really good. But I mean, you know, you shouldn't have to wait for 12 years to qualify.
So, Peter, I'm so sorry that you had to wait so long.
Yeah.
I mean, people need housing now, not 12 years later.
Yeah, so that's Peter's comment, and then we also have a comment coming in from Inga Klaus, and Inga says I pay $1,000 per month for 500 square feet. So
that is small, very very small.
It's a very small apartment. Tight. Yeah.
I've seen buildings like that, and they are very very compact. You know, traditional furniture won't even fit in there. I remember a place in Langley when I lived there. I went to go and look at, and it was about 4 years old actually when I looked at it. So it was a fairly newly built building, but very compact. I looked at a 2-bedroom and a den. Just so curious to see what it would look like. I'm thinking, okay, you'd use it as a podcast room or media room. Oh, wow. It was the size of a, bigger than a closet, like a walk-in closet, but it was pretty tiny. So I said, well, let's say a bedroom. I mean, 2 bedrooms were basically the size of one traditional bedroom. So very, very compact. Traditional furniture wouldn't fit in there. I would literally have to get rid of most furniture because they're not built for newly built apartments. They were built for like homes, like houses. And so I think a lot of furniture companies now are having to revisit their idea about compact furniture. So yeah, I mean, with that comment, Inga, like that's very tiny place for $1,000. Again, that's why PWD rates need to be increased so that people who live in market housing, they can pay the subsidized amount. They don't have to move and wait. And it's like what Peter's comment was, having to wait 12 years to get into BC housing, like that housing. Why not just get the subsidized amount for PWD to live in the housing that they're in now?
Well,
so don't have to move.
Yeah, and Peter had a great follow-up comment too. I have to say his follow-up comment was really good because he says, luckily, like when he was waiting for the 12 years, he says, luckily I could live with my parents. But then he says, but some people don't have that option, right?
Exactly.
He says some people don't have that option. So, I mean, there you go, right? So if you don't have parents, like, where are you going to wait for 12 years? Like, you know, out on the street for 12 years?
Well, exactly, Peter. And that's a very, very good comment. You know, if I could turn back the clock and say, well, you know, I miss my mom and my mother very deeply. You know, and I say, well, geez, like if I turn back the clock and say, well, you know, I just go live with my mom. Yeah, you know, because it was cheaper rent. You know, I could just pay the market rent, and she would have the senior supplement. So the house is now guaranteed that rent is going to get paid to the landlord. But unfortunately, a lot of us, we were not in that position. we can't do that. PWD who don't have family or they don't have relatives that they
And
can go
we have to say there's a lot of PWD that don't have. I mean, even if they do have family, they don't have family that's in a financial position. I mean,
exactly. Yeah,
you know,
they're not. It's burden on the families
Yeah.
now to take care of them, and
yeah,
you know, it's like different neighbors I've talked to too. Like they're in a very precarious situation where they have there's some of the other siblings within the housing that they're all having to gather together because the housing is so expensive. But now they have to move in together, but of course the cost of living is still high. So really, it doesn't really make it any easier. It actually can make it more expensive, especially if the place is not accessible. That maybe
Yeah.
the parents moved into somewhere else.
That's a big one. That's a big one, right?
Yeah, I mean,
my parents, for example,
Yeah.
you know, they've been out in Langley for, I guess, what's been like 20, actually more than that. It's been, 28 years or something like that, I think.
Time flies by, yeah.
28 years they've been out in Langley.
Yeah.
And we used to live out in, I grew up in Burnaby. And when they moved to Langley, they did it to downsize, right?
Yep.
I mean, that's what you do when you get older. You downsize, because you know your money's going to get tighter when you get older,
Exactly.
because you're on retirement income, and we all know that most people's retirement incomes don't really stretch that far. So I mean, that's why my parents aren't in a position to help me, because they're I mean, yeah, they're retired and they're getting their retirement income, but I mean, they have to really watch their pennies now, you know, just like everybody else. So to say, you know, I've heard comments from Sheila Malcolmson, and again, bless her heart, but I've heard her say this quite a few times, where she says, well, you know, there's an assumption here. She says that family takes care of family. And I mean, that's a nice thing to say. That's a nice thing to say.
Maybe some can.
That's a nice thing to say, but it's not really practical. And you can say there's a lot of families that love each other, that want to help each other, but they're not in a position financially to take on that extra burden, right? They're just not.
Yeah, and I went through that with my mother many years ago. I was in a situation where I needed to move. And I was, my mother was more than happy to have me move if I needed to, but was not in the financial position. And that was before the buying power was there, a little bit there, affordability, but it wasn't fully there. The pinch was already coming down on her. Now, fast forward to where we are now in 2025, affordability, the buying power for $1, the amount what you can actually go and get, it's definitely not there, and the incomes for PWD have not kept up to pace with the cost of living. And if I had to give a grade to the BC government for MSDPR, Ministry of Social Development Poverty Reduction, for our rates, yes, granted, our rates are higher than Ontario, and for me, I've learned over time, I don't like to peg provinces against a province saying, well, our rates are higher, yours are lower. I mean, I could say, well, Alberta's rates are higher than BC, but the cost of living in BC is much greater because of all of that damn carbon tax, you know, that's really, and I'm not going to go with that rhetoric because, I mean, that's all political. Yeah. But it does raise up the cost of everything, goods and services. And so again, the buying power, it's not there. And the BC government missed a huge opportunity of raising the rates in 2024. Yeah. They knew before we were going into a recession, like officially we were already in a recession. Governments will never admit that. No, you ask any politician, they'll say, no, we weren't in a recession. We were in a recession. We've been in a recession since 2019. I was just reading about that. Just before the pandemic. The pandemic opened up all the problems. Yeah. And that was the opportunity right there with that Canada Disability Benefit 5 years later, and we're still nothing to be seen.
If they had rolled it out right away like they did with the other one.
With CERB, then things would be a lot different. Yeah. So now we're now we're where we are. And so when the provincial government didn't give a rate increase last year, and again, like the question I had on the radio at that time with the premier was, hey, well, why didn't you give a rate increase? And it was all about alphabetical words, right? We're just kind of throwing out there. Mm-hmm. But again, like my manager asked me just last week, so did the premier ever answer your question? I go, no. He just told me, well, Brent, we raised the earnings exemptions. Maybe get a job if you haven't looked at that. She goes, what does a job have to do with your disability? I go, nothing. That you didn't answer your question. I go, exactly. Mm-hmm. I said, so again, like the rate increase should have been raised for PWD because the cost of living. Now that was last year, early last year. Now we're into 2025. Do I see going forward the rate increase? Now they're going to say, well, we're in an economic downturn. They're going to use an excuse saying we can't raise the rates.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, but every single member of Legislative Assembly got a rate increase, $60,000 for every single 47 days.
I do want to get into all that, Brent, and we're running out of time already. Yeah. So let's turn the page a little bit. And I wanted to get to
go off on a rant.
Yeah, I did want to get to the last couple comments before we get to the end of the show, because again, I have to say that our viewing audience is very kind to us. We don't get a lot of like hate. We don't get a lot of hate comments, which I love, actually, because we know that there's hate out there, and there's lots of people that love to paint targets on advocates' backs. We know that to be true, right? Mm-hmm. And I just have to say that I really love that our viewing audience does not do that. Anyway, we have a comment from Laurel Miles 5038. And she's a common she's a very common commenter, I have to say, that she comments quite a bit, and all her comments are very very well spoken. You can just tell, like, very thoughtful. You can tell she spends a lot of time with them. So this is a comment from Ghost of Christmas Past. That one about polishing the teeth, like you always say. So on that one,
the sparkly bubbles.
Yeah, on that one. So that was just before Christmas. We did that one. Yep. And here's the comment we got. So it says, I really enjoy listening to you all discuss with compassion the blatant systemic inequalities and discrimination by governments that place people with disabilities in unfairly created lifetimes of hardship. So, and then it goes on, the organizations that are supposed to eliminate PWD's human rights abuses or reduce poverty are entirely ineffective. And in my opinion, they all take advantage of disability dollars for their own selfish interests at our expense. Let me just scroll down. There's still more. I just want to scroll down here. At our expense. So many PWDs in legislative poverty have come and gone without ever being seen or cared about by decades of pro-poverty leadership in Canada. The government's indifference to PWDs is blatant. The discrimination is blatant, and their indifference endlessly maintains the same bad policies that hurt people. I am grateful for your dedication and your time spent highlighting the long-standing failures of governments to change the numerous discriminatory policies we have all been suffering as disabled citizens in Canada. Thanks for all you do. Listening to you all call out disability discrimination is time well spent. Isn't that an amazing comment?
I love that comment.
It's just so great. And I mean, these comments,
eloquently said. Wow. Yeah. You summed it up really well on that. And that's what, Laurel, that's what we advocate so much about. And, I've learned so much from other advocates, over time. I learned from other advocates too. And also self-advocating myself for change to make the systems better for every single PWD in Canada, so that nobody Nobody lives in legislated poverty. At one time I didn't know what that word, legislative poverty, what is it? But members of parliament started talking about that word, legislative poverty. I thought, wow, they're actually talking about, when we first started this podcast way back when on the Twitter space, once upon a time, they started talking about legislative poverty. I thought, wow, somebody's echoing my thoughts. Wow, they're on the same page
Because
as me.
they never used to let that cross their lips, right? They would never, it would never cross their lips.
Say that
Never.
word because they thought they would be condemned. Like,
Yeah.
how dare you speak about that? And they became very vocal. And over time, we've actually taught them. We've actually taught them it's okay. It's okay to say that word. But I mean, legislative poverty is not okay. But it's okay for them to actually be in synchronize with us, and having beautiful comments coming in on our podcast. It really makes makes my heart grow larger and larger.
Yeah.
It's like, like the Grinch that stole Christmas.
Yeah.
It makes, but it really makes me shine more. It makes me happy knowing that we got so many great advocates that want to see change happen, and other allies who want to see change happen. I think there's so much room for opportunity of holding governments from every single level accountable, and let's just put an end to all this red tape, bureaucracy in the regulations. I think Bill 7 in BC, I'll use BC as an example because you and I are in BC, Neil. I think that Bill 7 had a great opportunity, and it still can, because it can be amended. It could have been changed right then when the members of the Legislative Assembly from the party leaders at that time, had their ministers involved in it. So we had Minister Malcolmson, we had the opposition critic at the time, which is no longer, but we had Dan Davies, and we also had Sonia Furstenau there. I think the opportunity to change it at that time of the regulations, let's modernize it now. Let's change it rather than tweaking things up. I think they could have completely did an overhaul and came to an agreement. Had members of the disability community sitting around the table, different key people, not all just advocacy organizations, but have lived experience citizens sitting there too and having great input. Not just saying, oh, well, I'm hearing that a job is will better a person's life. Yes, it can, if they can do it. If they can't, then the rates have to be increased. And I'm not saying to Minister Malcolmson, I really I love what you have to say. And that, yes, I mean, that's true. There are lots of people who do want to have a job to better their
I did have a job for
me too.
For
I did
a long time, for 20 years.
Decades. I worked at many jobs, many organizations, lots of skills of learning different things. I went to college many times too. But here I am. My disability has mounted to many disabilities over time. Hey, but you know what? Raise the rates. And if a person is able to do things from that point on, like Tom and Joseph and a lot of different advocates that talk about basic income, great, right? You get that floor set, and now you got that opportunity of maybe blossom out. Let's try certain things. Hey, that didn't work. Okay, you know what? That's okay. Let's try something else. If you can do that, if a person can do that, that's great. But an excuse of saying, well, we've raised the earnings exemptions. Well, great. As if a person can work, but if they haven't, they can't work. Then what? We're not going to raise the rates. Like, in other words, the only thing that we're going to do is, if you want to have more income, you got to get a job. Is basically what the government's saying.
Which is really
wrong.
Which is really borderline gaslighting, and I don't like that.
It is. I don't like that.
But let's turn the page a little bit, because we are sort of running short on time, and I did want to get to other things. But I did want to also just quickly make, there's two other comments that are very quick, and I just wanted to mention them as well. One from Investigative Research Council. We know who that is. Yeah. He says, "Merry Christmas." So this was back on the Ghost of Christmas Past again. The comment on that one, and he says, thanks for the great informative videos and podcasts. Keep it up. We need the change. So that's one comment, which was great. And the other comment 5, had to do with your Breaking with Brent eggnog video. And again, I love those. I mean,
yes.
I mean, I think the majority of our audience may tune in to the just our podcast, but there's again so much other content, and your Breaking with Brent stuff is another arm of the content that we have on this channel. And anyway, so the comment was from Egg Yolks 1792. So I think they just made that name up just so they could comment on it. So it's Egg Yolks 1792, and they said, I don't know why YouTube recommended this video, but thank you for sharing your journey, kind sir. So I love the comments that we get, and I always I love that the comments we get are very thoughtful. They're very intelligent. I very rarely get any kind of targets aimed at us or any kind of hate aimed at us. They're, like I said, most of the comments are great. They're very thoughtful, and very intelligent, and I love that. So that's kind of all the comments I wanted to get through to on past videos. And now, Brent, while we still have time, I wanted to switch gears again, and let's go to Twitter, because now we're on Twitter again.
We are, yeah.
Well,
you are.
the PWD Allies podcast is officially back on Twitter. That's our corporate entity now. And now that I'm on Twitter, I can see, I can see more things. More plugged into things.
You set up an account on there. I just want our listeners and our, the ones that are people that are watching live right now, and our listeners on the podcast to know that, Neil, you've set up a PWD Allies direct site. That's our corporate site. I'm no longer on Twitter. I had made that decision that I think it was time that I needed to focus strictly on the podcast directly on here. I think it just came time that I needed to make a new change in 2025 going forward. And it was a tough decision to let go. When I originally formed on there, wow, I've had that account
a long time.
Since 2011, I believe. I signed up for Twitter, and I didn't even know what Twitter was all about back then. How do I tweet? What is that?
And I'm not going to mention any names, just like I didn't mention any names when I did that 3 minute short. But we have to say that we reached out and asked for help on creating a Twitter site for us, a corporate one, because again, I haven't been on Twitter for almost 3 years myself too. Like I decided to walk away from it 3 years ago, and then the idea came about. It was like, why don't you guys go back on Twitter? So we said, sure. You set up the account. Well, the account was just a mess because it had all this pro-Palestine stuff, and like I said, I'm not going to pick sides, but it annoyed me, right? Because what does pro-Palestine have to do with disability advocacy? Nothing, right? So it really annoyed me, and it was all this rent strike stuff, national rent strike, and like I said, this podcast has your name on it, and it just became a real embarrassment. So then I created my own. I took over and shut that one down, the bad one. I shut it down, and then this person brought it back up again. So we had two sites. We had two Twitter sites, and it just became really confusing. And I don't blame people for being confused, but because it's a whole big mess, like I hope that we've kind of gained control back of the podcast again, and I hope people can forgive us for that misstep. It wasn't really our fault. It was just, we kind of trusted this person to help us, and it just didn't work out, and it became this huge mess. and then we had to clean it up afterwards.
Well, and that's part of the reason why I decided to just close out my Twitter account. My inbox was, ever since I had launched way back when we first started the show back on, people always said, "Oh yeah, let's go to the show," and that's why I called it was the show. And they started on Twitter Space, and then we blossomed out from there into where we are now. Like we're on strictly on YouTube. I've never had so many people had messaged me on my inbox. It was beyond overloaded. And all the people asking me, "What's going on here? Why is all this other stuff on this one Twitter site? Is that you typing all this stuff out?" And because my picture was on the advertising for PWD Allies, my picture was there.
Yeah.
And Pro-Palestine and the rent strike stuff and other stuff too, apparently, which I didn't even know, because I've been focused on getting other guests lined up for the show going forward. I've been focusing on other personal stuff that's been going on with my corporate landlord. Just so FYI, so people know what's going on. So my main focus has been on a lot of other things. And so we asked a person to basically handle this account, and I hadn't even monitored it.
Well, and to be clear, the reason why we didn't monitor it is a very good reason. I mean, it sounds stupid to say it out loud, but it's a very good reason. It's because I already said I don't have a Twitter account, and I haven't had one for 3 years. So there was no way for me to actually go on and monitor it, because I was asking this person, can I please get the password to get on to look at it? And I was told repeatedly, "Oh, well, that I can't get access to it." I was trying, like, this person would gave me the right thing, thought so, and none of the accesses were working. So I wasn't able to get on to check. And by the time, this is only a case of 3 days, like 2 or 3 days, right? So 2 or 3 days later, I finally get access to the site, and you finally get access to the site to actually see what's going on. Yeah. So it was only a matter of 2 or 3 days with all this stuff happen.
Well, yeah, and I had brought it to
we
your
finally
attention.
get access to the site to see what's going on, and so that's why.
And I had brought it to your attention about this, and people were very concerned. Some of the comments I had were, I'm not even going to repeat some of the comments because they were pretty hurtful comments. And I do my best to advocate for change, and when I say change, I want to see people's incomes brought up to above poverty level, like no less, but above poverty level, and then tied to inflation. Okay, number one, I want to see people have the proper housing. I want to see people have proper transportation supports. I want people to have accessible, basic access to businesses, transit, anything in their community. There's so many things that I advocate for, and I bring people on as guests, or we talk about it as a one-to-one on a guest, or members of parliament, you name it. And so that's what I do. And when I see Palestine, and I stay neutral on all that. I want to make this very clear to people. I know that there's good people on either side of the equation. I just want to see people happy. Okay, I just want to see people happy in life. But when I see different things, people brought to my attention saying, "Well, are you not advocating anymore? Are you?"
And I just have to say, again, I'm like you, Brent. I like to stay neutral. Yeah. I've already said that my son is Jewish, so you can say I'm a bit biased, and that's true. But at the same time, I do try to stay neutral. There's that song of like, "War, what is it good for? Absolutely nothing. Sing it again." That song, right? So I try to stay neutral on it, and I just have to say, when this whole thing blew up, one of the comments that I saw on Twitter, which really annoyed me, I have to say, is somebody said, if you're not pro-Palestine, you can't consider yourself a disability advocate.
Yes.
I
Yeah.
mean, what
Yeah.
a ridiculous thing to say. What
I
a
saw that too.
totally ridiculous thing to say. If you're not pro-Palestine, you're not a disability advocate. That is super ridiculous. I'm sorry.
I saw that too,
yeah.
and I was one of the messages that was sent to me too was said the same thing, and it was so hurtful. And I said,
Yeah.
okay, so hey, like Hero, you want to go out there and advocate for disabled people? Go for it. Go for it. Right? I'm gonna keep advocating for change to try to hold politicians accountable. Yes, different people have different methods. A rent strike. I don't know. Is that going to solve anything? I leave that up to Acorn Canada.
Yeah.
That's what I do. Acorn Canada. That's what they want to do.
Yeah.
That's great. That's great. If they want, that's what they want to do.
That's the lane that's the lane that they've picked,
Yeah.
and that's fine.
Yeah. Every advocate or advocacy groups have their own eager thing that they want to accomplish. Okay.
Yeah.
But I focus on what the show is about, what we do here.
Yeah.
Okay. So everyone will focus on what their strengths are, on what they want to advocate for. I could do a whole show on.
Yeah.
We've
picked a lane. We've picked a lane, and we've decided that disability advocacy has nothing to do with pro-Palestine stuff.
Exactly.
Or anti-Palestine. Nothing to do with either side.
Yeah.
Like that's our lane. That's our lane that we've decided. Yeah.
If people want to put that, and I'm not saying that I'm for or against, or I stay neutral.
Yeah.
If you want to have that on, and I'm not saying that it shouldn't be brought to people's attention on different levels. I've read it on social media everywhere before. You put it on your own personal account.
Exactly.
Put it on your own personal account, and the account for advocacy is just advocacy, bringing on guests. Let's talk about what do they go through on a day-to-day basis. How do we change it as disability advocates or organizations going forward? I mean, you go to any other disability advocacy organization across Canada, okay? Look at their main sites. Do they talk about stuff like pro-Palestine or Jewish or any wars that are going on around the world? No, they don't. They don't. And that's why people were so hurt when they sent me comments saying, Brent, you've abandoned the disability community and you call yourself a PWD advocate, a host for PWD Allies podcast. If someone says, how dare you? You should shut down your show right now. Yeah. Do I give up on the disability community? No, I won't.
And my pushback again is that comment that I saw was, if you can't be pro-Palestine, you're not a disability advocate. Yeah, that is just really hurtful. That is just hurtful and just foolish and just
that put tears in my eyes.
Really foolish and ridiculous. Yeah, I don't understand why anybody would say if you're not pro-Palestine, you can't be a disability advocate. Like what?
Yeah,
what?
That makes no sense.
No sense.
And, I want our disability community across Canada and around the world to know that I am not giving up. I will not give up as an advocate to stand up for myself as either self-advocating or be there as a voice. And I'm not there as a king to say that what I'm saying is perfect. No, I learned from you all, and you learned from me. We all learned together. I think all this infighting going on, and all I saw was hand grenades and all these comments under the message thread, nonstop. And then people sending me messages saying, Brent, what the hell is going on? And then they start unfollowing me because they say, well, I can't follow an advocate who is going to take sides on this and that. And I go, I just stay forward. I keep just doing advocacy. That's what I do on the show. If you want to follow me,
we didn't pick a side. We didn't pick a side. We just happened to trust somebody with a Twitter account that we shouldn't have. And that was our mistake. That was our mistake. But
what I can say really quickly, Neil, is that because I'm not on Twitter now, okay. What I can tell our listeners and our viewers is that follow PWD Allies. Okay, well, one word, all PWD in capital letters Allies.
Yeah, and the A is capitalized too. So it's at PWD
capitalized,
capital
and
A,
then the A is capitalized, and then the Allies, the other letters are not capitalized.
all small letters.
Yeah.
So follow that account. I'm not on Twitter, so all the show information is there. You will find me here. That's the best I can do.
And it's basically a corporate entity now.
Yeah.
The Twitter account, the PWD Allies Twitter account, is a corporate entity, and again, you've removed yourself from Twitter as a protection to yourself, because
and the Weatherman 2709, people knew me as Weatherman on there.
Yeah.
It really did a gut punch to me, just so the disability community know. It was a huge gut punch to me. And I figured, I don't want to take mudslings thrown at me. I mean, I'm just here as who I am. And if people, they don't want that, they don't agree with my advocacy, well, I mean, you can advocate the way you want, but if you agree with me and you like what I do and the content that I put out, you can find me here. If there's enough energy put out there of saying, Brent, please come back as the weatherman. I don't know. Like at this point in time, I can say, right now, no, I'm not.
Yeah.
But if there's enough energy out there saying, okay, I'm sorry, the ones who threw mudslings at me, if you say, I'm sorry, all I want to hear is a comment, I'm sorry. I will compile all that. I will make a decision on that.
Well, and again, Brent, I mean,
I may just say no.
This is why we wanted to do today's show, because I wanted to prove that our audience on YouTube is amazing. Like we get so much good, solid, positive feedback on YouTube. There's been like one troublesome person that lashed out a little bit and kind of vomited some things. That was a couple years ago. Vomited some things on the YouTube. That was like a one-time thing though, and all the other interactions on YouTube have been amazing, because we have some really intelligent people that are watching our shows, and they give really heartfelt, really genuine responses. I mean, we just read them,
I had, before I shut my account down, I had 18 comments that came in that were 100% positive, telling me, thank you so much for everything that you're doing. I love your shows. Please keep advocating. Please push the government to make changes happen. And I promise, I will keep holding governments to account, all levels. I don't care what flavor they are, what color they are, because I believe that bringing people together, working together as members of legislative assembly, if it's on provincial or federal, I believe that the common ground, they come together, they work together to make change happen. If they're not doing that, we need to hold them accountable and make our voices be heard. So I want to thank each and every one that have sent me great comments before and thanking me for everything I'm doing. But the ones who sent lunges at me saying, how dare you, you've abandoned the disability community. No, I haven't abandoned nobody.
We love the positivity. I want to really focus today on the positivity, all the positive message we get. I love that. I love to see the intelligence.
It really.
I love to see the intelligent comments. I just love it. So keep them coming. But
when it comes down to the weatherman Twitter handle, I don't know at this time. Right now I'm saying no. Right. But if I do decide to, basically I would only bring it back up eventually, not right now, because it was very emotional for me to shut it down after all the advocacy that I've been doing through Twitter, because that's where this channel was born. This channel was born off of there. And so when I had to make the heart-wrenching decision of people, I'm not even going to say the comments, but you can imagine, Neil, and the listeners, the comments that I had coming in. And there was no death threats, just to let people know. I will make that very public now. No, there was no death threats. I had that happen in the past.
We have to get off the show, Brent. I wanted to go back again. Let's go back in the Wayback Machine. When you first launched the Canadians with Disabilities and Their Allies, that was on Twitter Spaces, right? So everything started, your advocacy started on Twitter.
Oh, it was so great.
And
So
I
great.
mean, the Twitter Spaces was like 3 or 4 years ago or whatever it was. But you've been on Twitter for way before
Long.
that, way before
yeah.
that. But we have to say that
2011.
we have to say that the Canadians with Disabilities and their allies started with Twitter Spaces, and we were basically forced off, or I'll say you were forced off Twitter Spaces because of some bad apples and some bad actors. So, you know, you and I both were forced off of Twitter Spaces, and then we had to relaunch on YouTube. And since we've done that, like I said, the energy on YouTube is way better. We're not getting attacked. We get a lot of really positive, intelligent comments. It's so much better. And not to say that there's no intelligence on Twitter. I mean, I know there is.
Oh yeah.
But again, the reason why we left, or you left Twitter Spaces, was there was so much bad energy. It was basically a mutiny of people forcing you off of your own show. So you were forced to rebrand on here on YouTube, and you know it's been pretty successful, right? We've kept our nose clean. We've kept our nose clean, and you know it's been like 3 years later, we've kept our nose clean, and we reached out to one person. We said, "Can you help us with this?" And the one time we reach out and try to get a third person involved besides Bertie, because Bertie's amazing. We just have to say.
Totally.
So this is the first. This is the first time since the very beginning that we reached out to another person. The first time we do that, and it blows up in our faces, and so it's like never again. So we're gonna keep our group small again. So it's gonna be you, me, and Bertie. And that's it. And,
I remember on our year-end review, 2024 year-end review, and what's in store for 2025. And I had said, I'm looking for there's opportunity for growth for the channel going forward. The person came forward and said, yeah, I'm willing to help. And yeah, I mean, that's great, but you should have put that stuff on your own Twitter, your own Twitter channel. Okay, not on the PWD Allies one, and that's what happened. It just blossomed from that point on. Right?
I mean, you and I talked privately, and I love metaphors. So let's talk about the metaphor. Is like, if I suddenly said, Brent, I've got 10 of my family members. 10 of my family members. I'm going to invite them over to your house for dinner tonight. In 1 hour, I have all these family members coming, Brent.
Shit.
And they're coming. Is that fair to you? Just say I'm doing this.
I don't have accommodation for them. I wasn't expecting that.
You weren't expecting it, but it's like, we have this guest coming on, and it's like, and we were like, wow, thanks for letting us know.
What it really, just so our listeners, viewers understand, is just to put it into context, is like Neil mentioned, it's like surprise. Oh, by the way, you're having all these people coming over, or surprise. This is the guest you got coming on. What you would do?
You would ask the person
first and say, okay, well, by the way, I have certain people lined up, because we have a busy schedule with our programming that we do on our end. We could have maybe had people lined up too. It's about communicating, right? Because I could go to Neil, Neil, by the way, I've lined up, I've got eight members of Legislative Assembly coming on. I've got a transportation advisor coming on. I've got an advocacy organization coming on. What? When did this happen? Yeah. Oh, I didn't tell you? Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. I've got them scheduled in though, Neil. What? Yeah. Oh no, I've got certain other people lined up.
And then I could say, thanks for the heads up, Brent.
Yeah.
Thanks for letting me know, Brent. Yeah.
So just to kind of let everybody know that's what went on.
That's what went down, and that's why we were so mad about it.
So then when I people leaving me those nasty messages saying I abandoned. No, I didn't abandon you. I did not abandon you. And so again, just before we close the show, I will say again, and I'll leave it at that. I'll say, Weatherman 2709 is now sleeping right now. It's now put aside for now. I don't know if I will revisit that Twitter handle down the road. It has now parked away. It may come back, it may not. Advocacy will continue on where it is right now on the show on YouTube. So if people say, well, where do I find you? You're going to have to find me on YouTube. That's basically where I am. You can go to the Twitter handle that Neil has created. Again, I'm not sure what the handle is again. Neil, you can maybe just explain to our listeners. And then I'm going to make a final comment before we end the show today. But maybe, again, to let the listeners know the @ symbol, how to find that PWD.
The Twitter. Yeah. So all it is it's @ and then PWD in capitals. And then the first letter of Allies is capitalized too. So it's PWD Allies, first letter of Allies capitalized. And then, so PWD.
So PWDA
all capitalized, and then the remainder of Allies.
Oh, okay.
So that's the Twitter handle now.
And you'll find all the show content apparently on there and advertising.
And again, Brent, we do have to get off, but we wanted to as well to do a quick screen share, and I don't want to spend more than maybe 2 or 3 minutes on this. I maybe wanted to spend a bit more time on it, but we don't really have time. So, but
no problem.
Let's go to the screen share because we had this. Again, I'm following because I'm on Twitter now. I can follow these things.
Oh.
I'll go to the screen share now.
At least one of us is on there anyway.
Yeah, we have Harman Bangu. Harman Bangu. I think that's how to pronounce the last name. He's a member of the like an MLA here in BC. From the BC Conservatives. And he posted a tweet just the other day. He says the BC legislative schedule was just released. And as an elected MLA, I find it completely embarrassing. This schedule does not reflect the work ethic British Columbians deserve from their representatives. I can't imagine explaining to my friends and family that this is my work schedule.
Wow.
This won't be my work schedule. I will continue to work hard every day, as I have been, to hold David Eby's radical NDP accountable for the mess they're creating. British Columbians deserve better. And so I just want to see if I can switch screens here so I can is it going to let me? Yeah, let's so I've kind of brought that up to full screen. Let me scroll back here, Brent.
Sure.
1 second. I've got too many windows open now, Brent. Okay, here we go.
It must be getting cold. Too many windows open.
So you can see everything in blue there is the only dates that the MLAs are sitting.
Oh wow!
And if you count all those days up, I think I counted up to it was 66 days.
Oh my gosh!
Now let's compare that to the average British Columbian. You can say that the average British Columbian, if they're working full time, they get 2 weeks off. They get 2 weeks off paid vacation. Most British Columbians, they get 2 weeks off. So that's 50 weeks they work. 50 weeks at 5 days a week. That's 250 days a week. The average British Columbian works, and you compare that to 66 days, and you can say, well, of course the MLAs are going to be working in their offices, and that's true. They're consistency offices. That's true, but let's also make the point. Again, as a parent, I can say this, because my son now is a teenager, and he pushes back, and I say, well, you have to come home. You have to come home and do your chores at home, right? I said you have to do things like change your bed, and you have to do laundry and things like that. Because if you're not home, you're not actually doing the work. And let's again clarify what the term MLA means. It means member of legislative assembly. So these people that we elect, the people elect, we're electing them to change legislation or to enact better legislation. That's a big part of their job.
Yeah.
So
to represent us.
yeah. So if they're not in the legislature,
then
how can they be active members of a legislative assembly if they're actually not in the legislature?
Yeah.
I mean, you can be.
Makes sense.
You know that saying is like, all talk and no action. There's that all talk and no action, right? Like,
or we would say lip service, but there's nothing.
Yeah, I mean, and again, not. I don't mean to pick, I don't mean to pick on Sheila Malcolmson.
No.
But as an example, like Sheila Malcolmson could come on our podcast 200 times. Let's say, for example, she came on our podcast for 200 times and she had these amazing conversations with us, like 200 amazing conversations with us. Yeah. But then if she had these conversations with us but never did anything, never actually legislated anything.
Yeah, because the legislature is not in session.
Legislature is not in session, so she can't.
What can be done?
She can say stuff.
Yeah,
she can say stuff till she's blue in the face. But if you're not actually sitting, you can't actually do anything. You're not doing anything.
Exactly.
And that's the point. So you have 66 days where they're actually only doing something. The
last session they had in BC for the legislature was in just before summer. It was just before summer, so they won't be back in session until later in February. 2025. Like, wow. And only for 66 days,
which is
something like that. Like,
which is just ridiculous. I mean, I meant to.
There was no fall session.
I meant to go on Google before the show. I kind of ran out of time, because I'm only one person. Yeah. But I meant to go online and compare in the past how many sitting days in the past there have been on BC legislature, and I wasn't able to look at that. But I know for a fact it's way less now. Every year it gets less and less and less.
Yeah, when you look at the federal government, though, Neil, I mean, my gosh, they left in December, and they were supposed to be back. Basically on January 27th. Yeah. So only a month, just over a month. I mean, because there's work that has to get done.
Yeah.
And I remember Christy Clark, who was our BC premier way back when. There was some of the sessions that went on, and people were so outraged because there was no fall session. She goes, "Oh well, there's no work that needs to be done. There's nothing to talk about." Well, meanwhile, PWD rates didn't get increased because there was nothing like there was nothing in the budget. So then they didn't have a session to basically argue with each other about saying, well, why didn't you do it? Why didn't you raise it? Well, there was nothing to see here, folks. So let's move on to the next spring.
And I mean, you're based in Victoria, so you would know way better than me. And you've actually gone to the legislature to look at
many times.
Yeah, to look at question period and all that. So
it gets very interesting.
So you would know. But I think in the past it wasn't uncommon for the sitting days to be around 100 days, didn't it? Didn't it used to be around 100 days?
Pretty close to it.
Pretty close to that. It was kind of the average, maybe a little bit less, but around 100 days. And so to go from 100 days to now it's 66 days. And I know we had Bertie. She did some math, and she wanted to compare BC to Ontario. And so she did some math, and she said, well, okay, so BC's got 66 days, and Ontario, by comparison, has 82 days.
Whoa.
So that, I mean, just on that alone too, that's a big difference, right? And again, so this whole thing bugs me where, as soon as David Eby got elected, who did he look after first? He looked after himself first. It was very self-interest. It's like, I got to make sure that I bribe people with extra money so that they don't walk the floor. I got to make sure to look after myself because my self-interest matters more than the people of BC. I mean, that's the truth, right?
I'm glad you mentioned that, Neil, because
Yeah.
that's what some of my neighbors were talking to me
Yeah.
yesterday,
Yeah.
where that's how they see it.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, just to the, to the government,
Yeah.
like that's what people, what Neil's saying right now, what he just said, that's what I'm hearing in the
Yeah.
community. Okay,
I hope 4 years from now, I really hope 4 years from now, people remember that the very first thing that David Eby did was he bribed all of his MLAs. He bribed all the MLAs, gave them all these fancy titles to give them more money, and he looked after himself first. That's his very first action as premier, to look after himself first and not look after the people of BC. And
person with disabilities in BC, $0 increase. Not even tied to inflation. And that's what I want to see going forward too. COLA, cost of living adjustment, tied to inflation. Ontario did it. I mean, should it do more? Yes, absolutely. But they tied it though.
Yeah, and like I said, with my metaphor is, again, as a parent, I tell my son to come home and do his chores. If he's not at home, he can't do his laundry, he can't change his bed. Same thing. If they're not sitting in the legislature, they can't actually do anything. They're not doing anything. I mean, they're meeting with their constituents. That's great, but you're not actually actively doing anything to change anything. You're just
can't pass nothing.
You're just saying nice words. That's all you're saying.
Yeah, it's all pretty words, but
it's all pretty words. There's no action. The only action that can happen is if you're sitting in the legislature.
Yeah. Actually, because that's what you're actually there. That's what you're elected to do, is actually pass laws, pass changes in the legislature. And if you're not there, then what can you do?
Yeah,
I mean,
nothing.
You can, the constituents, you could say, no, I hear you. There's more to do. Yeah, we need to do better. But if the legislature's not sitting there, okay, so you're telling me this. So get it in there and actually then change it. And, members of Legislative Assembly, if your boss is not wanting to do that, then I don't know what to tell you. Yeah. Like, all I can tell you, though, is people in the community that I'm hearing a lot. And I talk to people, Brent probably talks to a lot of people. I do talk to a lot of people. I was getting a lot of messages in my inboxes saying, hey, Brent, keep advocating, keep holding those elected officials to account. We need to changing things. We need to see seniors' income raised up. And yes, I advocate for people with disabilities. I also advocate for people who are seniors with disabilities, okay? Their incomes need to be increased. PWD income needs to be increased. People on low income, OW, okay, in Ontario, income assistance in BC. There's other provinces that have their own levels of income assistance, which is just under disability. There's a lot of people that are on those income assistance levels that are pending to get onto disability because they have a disability, but because they can't find a doctor or a practitioner who's willing to fill out all the lengthy red tape, bureaucratic paperwork to get them assessed and designated as a person with disability. Like, there is so many hurdles, problems happening in society. And that's why I keep advocating, and I won't stop. I hold them accountable. I bring them onto the show and say, so what are you going to do to change it? These are our voices. What are you going to do to go forward and go to the legislature, whatever province you're in, make the changes happen? I want to stop the infighting going on within governments, the infighting going on within the PWD community. I mean, all this has to stop. And I'll keep on fighting. So if you guys want to join me in the fight to stop legislative poverty going forward, reach out to us on the channel. If you believe in our advocacy, click the like button on the YouTube channel. If you're in the position of sending a donation to us, the like channel is right down on there. You'll find it. I've seen it. I've seen it on there myself.
The dollar bill. Look for the dollar bill.
And also, just to give a programming announcement too, before we end, we launched our first Christmas telethon back in 2024. There was lessons to be learned on how that we're going to be doing that. So 2025 is a new year. So we're going to, what I'd like to do is that advocacy doesn't stop. People's incomes, it's not just a one-off of going, we're going to do a telethon. We're just, let's just wait till another year. We're going to do another one. This is ongoing. So the donation option is there. So if you're in a financial position at any point of time that you want to be able to help out, if you can help, it's great. If you can't, I understand, because there's a lot of people on our channel that are subscribed that are in very low income, or they're on a fixed income and they're not in the financial means to be able to help. I understand that, and I get it, because I'm going through that myself. I had a donor who really helped me out every so often. When they could, they dropped off.
Yeah.
And it's unfortunate. Why? Because now that person is actually in legislated poverty themselves.
Yeah.
I found out that the person actually had a severe accident, is now and actually in poverty. The person was actually in a good position of being able to help out when they could, and I found out that that person is now permanently disabled and is now in a financial position. So I want to thank that person for everything that you had done. My income hasn't changed. A $0 increase to you, just to heads up. Government chose not to last year. I still get a rent increase. Cost of living keeps going up. I think we can change things going forward to the government. Basically tie everything to cost of living. Don't depend on the federal government for the CDB, folks.
Yeah.
The government, provincial governments do not.
Well,
so that's what he's doing. They're waiting.
We didn't even talk about Justin.
We
Trudeau.
can do another show on that.
We didn't even talk about Justin Trudeau, and we won't. We won't actually.
Yeah.
Because Cheryl Hardcastle is going to be coming on the show.
Yes, that's the next show.
She's going to come on the 17th.
Yeah.
It'll be the 17th she comes on. So we'll probably have to do a show before then too. But she's coming on the 17th, probably going to be talking about Justin Trudeau and everything that happened. So we're looking forward to that. But again, I did want to say that now that we have the live chat going on, the dollar bill there is always available on the live chat. And then when this whole thing gets posted as a video, when it goes off of the live and then gets translated into just a normal video, it takes about another 24 hours again,
approximately,
for the video to change over, and because the dollar bill will disappear and then it will reappear again in the video after about 24 hours, where it says you can leave a super like, or super thanks or a super like. You can hit the dollar bill, and it's there at the bottom, or kind of in the header of the video. You'll see it. But again, it disappears for about 24 hours and it comes back again. So and every so often in 2025, when we can, we'll make a more of a programming announcement regarding that. Is we're going to be doing some telethons, but in the meantime, basically, just look for that super like one, and you'll see the dollar bill. Click on it, and all your information is behind the scenes, like your information. We don't have it. We don't see any of it.
Yeah, we don't see any of your stuff.
The only one that sees it is YouTube.
Is you. You
and YouTube. That's the only people that see it, not us.
Yeah. It's like when you go to make a purchase. Like some people will use they'll use their phones. Like they'll use their phones, tap and pay. That basically that's it. Like you load up if you're Android or Apple, you basically preload that through that, and it'll actually. It's
just your Google Wallet or your Apple Pay wallet.
And it's
that you use on your phone.
Yeah.
So it's private to you. Like all that's private, and
we don't see it.
We don't see any of that. Yeah.
So it's secure for you, and I like it that way. That's great. So I want to thank everybody for tuning in today to our episode. There was lots to pile in we crammed lots in. I mean, there's so much more to talk about. Just to let everybody know, just to kind of federally, the federal government has they've pro-government until March 24th of 2025. Cheryl Hardcastle is going to be diving into that when we have her on. She's going to say what's going to happen from that point on. We're going to have a little segment maybe before. We're going to try to have one on before she comes on.
Yeah. I've actually reached out to Minnie. We'll see if because actually this is the only show this week that we're having, because I've got a lot of stuff going on just this week, so we're not going to have a show on Friday. We typically have a show on Mondays and Fridays. It seems like that's our typical days now, but I have too much stuff going on, so we can't do any other show this week. So this is the only one. So I'm hoping that Minnie can join us at some point the following week, like maybe next Monday or Tuesday, and she'll talk about again how to survive ODSP, financial strategies to survive ODSP. So I'm hoping that she can come on next week. If not, we'll try to line up somebody else. But right now, that's what I'm kind of put my fishing line out to her, and so we'll see if she's available for next Monday or Tuesday. So that's the plan. And then after Monday or Tuesday, then we have Cheryl Hardcastle coming on the Friday the 17th. Yeah.
Very good. Very good. There's definitely lots of room for guests. So definitely, I want people to reach out. Leave Neil a message on the Twitter handle there. Again, it's all capital P, capital W, capital D, capital A, LL, small letters, LLIES.
Exactly. You win the prize, Brent.
Hey! Yeah. And if you want to stay informed, that's where you go. Thank you again, everyone, for tuning in to PWD Allies podcast, your place to stay connected with advocacy going forward in 2025 and beyond. Thank you.
So
Take care.
This is the end of show 2.
End of show 2.
Okay.
Bye,
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.